Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everyone, welcome to my guide for Chiron. Chiron is a unique hunter in SMITE who's focused mainly on dealing ability-based damage, and is good in both the mid lane and ADC role, which sucks because Martikaros is in the game, and Marty does what Chiron does, only like 10 times better. But Chiron is still a super unique hunter, so if the current lineup of meta hunters has gotten stale for you, Chiron is a good god to pick up as a consistently decent hunter who diverts from the norms of regular hunters with his playstyle. As I mentioned, Chiron wants to go all out with the power build, but it has to be said that he's really not all that bad with the crit build if you prefer it, but as he lacks an attack speed stim, the kin size build is not an option for him. Relics wise, it's as you'd expect, just beats an Aegis on him. Your shard is what you'd expect too, just wing shard is fine, but as much as it pains me to say it, horn shard is pretty good on him too, in part thanks to his passive. Chiron can store up to 3 passive stacks, and every time Chiron casts an ability, he will consume a passive stack and heal the closest ally with the lowest health, counting himself. And Chiron restores the passive stack every 12 seconds, but has no ways to increase the rate at which he gains passive stacks. And if every ally near Chiron is at maximum HP, including himself, no passive stacks will be consumed. The heal amount itself is static and based off of player levels, so it's not bad at all for a heal, but keep in mind that you're not fully in control of who gets healed, only when you heal, which can be a problem since the heal is obviously much better for squishy targets such as yourself, but weak for your tanks. The timing of when you heal can definitely be tricky, and you're going to really plow through your passive stacks if you spam too many abilities as Chiron. The ability Chiron uses most to activate this passive is his first ability. Chiron places an AoE in front of himself, and this AoE will cleanse all allies inside of it if CC. After a short delay, the AoE explodes, dealing damage. So 2 things to keep in mind. That cleanse is instant, but it's not like beads where it makes you immune. All it does is cleanse exactly whatever CC is on whoever you hit. There is a very brief window of CC immunity due to how Smite works, I guess, so it can actually cleanse more than one thing, unlike say a Geb shield. So there's plenty of high impact plays you can make with this ability, such as cleansing hard CC from a fellow carry, or cleansing your entire team from something like a Cerberus ultimate. But it takes plenty of game knowledge from you as the Chiron player to time properly, since you have to read the enemy players so that you can cleanse the CC as early as possible, and it's fully possible to cleanse the CC the instant it hits an allied god. But again, it'll take a lot of practice to get down on every ability, especially when it comes to cleansing on yourself. This requires the best possible reads and reactions from you as the Chiron player, but it can completely annihilate the enemy team if they overcommit following up off of a CC that you end up cleansing. So get practicing with it, but as I'm sure you can guess, the ability is mostly used for damage. But I talked about the cleansing part most of all because the ability does damage and that's that. It's great for both wave clear and poke, and you should be going for this ability whenever you can during the laning phase, but hold on to it in the late game in case you need to cleanse. This ability is almost always used for damage though, thanks to its interaction with Chiron's second ability. Once Chiron has leveled this ability, his basic attacks and first ability will apply a 5% physical protections debuff on whoever you hit, and marks them with your second ability for 3.5 seconds, the protections debuff lasting for the same amount of time. Chiron can activate his second ability whenever he has successfully marked an enemy, including minions, and a tracking shot will be fired on every currently marked enemy, which will deal damage and slow any enemy's hit. This ability is perfect to both get fights started and follow up off of your teammate's CC when they get the fight started. And as with using your first ability, usage of this ability is blatantly obvious, simply that the window of opportunity for the best usage is small. Surprise, surprise, you want a basic attack and or use your first ability to follow up off of your teammates, but you don't want a 2 right away. 3.5 seconds isn't an eternity, but it's enough time to reapply the mark, let your teammates CC finish first, let your opponents use a relic like purification beads, or use a movement ability first. Because think about it, if you use this ability that literally cannot miss, when you can simply use it later to chase targets down, or use it when they're already CC'd by one of your teammates, or have access to a movement ability to make the slow useless, what have you really accomplished? Obviously a slow that can't miss is perfect for chasing down targets, so hold on to it for when you know it'll have an impact, but don't wait so long that your targets are just out of reach. That said, if you use it early on, you can still combo it flawlessly with Chiron's third ability. Chiron becomes immune to knockups and gains immense movement speed. He also gains physical power and is able to basic attack while in this state, but his camera's rotation speed is reduced. And finally, he can cancel his ability at any time. If Chiron hits an enemy while he's galloping, they will be flung backwards behind Chiron via a knockback. So this is either the best ability in the game or the worst one, depending on the current matchups. If it's allowed to go off in its entirety, you cannot catch Chiron. Unless, of course, you can, with global and semi-global ultimates from junglers such as Thor or Tsukuyomi, or ultimates from the same god class such as Chernobog or Rom. This is the number one thing that makes Chiron a bit of a coin flip character if you play him in casual game modes, and why you want to pick him later on in the draft if you're playing ranked, because when this ability gets countered, it gets countered hard, and Chiron's only other way to get himself out of bad situations is by trying to slow his opposition with his second ability, which against most of the explosive supports and assassins chasing you won't matter much. so you need this ability to have a high chance of going off to remain safe as Chiron. Things like long range stuns and on-command hard CC like Nox and Ganesh 2s are a massive problem and things to look out for, so if you don't know what all the gods do yet, try and make note of every ability that's able to stop your dash as you see them so you know who not to pick Chiron into. But obviously, seeing as how you can basic attack during this, there are absolutely times where you want to use this aggressively. The same rules of not using it near people who can easily stop it still applies, but it's still probably the best follow-up a hunter can have for your teammate's CC during the laning phase. The basic attack damage plus the mark for your 2 plus the knockback, it's insane. You don't want to knock back every time though. It may seem like the cornerstone and the point of the ability, but sometimes it can just completely annihilate your own team by throwing them off. Say your support stuns the enemy ADC, and you come charging in. Good, but then you kick them out of your support's follow-up ability. That's bad. So you need to read each situation and try to determine whether or not you should be dashing in order to set up for yourself and do more damage, or keep it in reserve as an escape. And then on top of that, determine quickly in the moment whether or not you'll be kicking the enemy backwards to guarantee a kill, or it'll guarantee your teammates flaming you for making them miss their abilities. This decision making is a lot harder than decision making with Chiron's ultimate. Chiron becomes CC immune and reduces his movement speed, and is unable to cast any of his other abilities while in this state, and can remain in this state for up to 5 seconds, but can cancel at any time. Pressing the basic attack button in this state will fire a medium speed projectile which goes through all walls and enemies, dealing damage and marking any enemies with his second ability. All 3, plus on-hit items, plus his second ability, results in unreal amounts of damage, if you can hit every shot. More on that later. Another mechanic in his ultimate is that you can't reach 0 HP and die. Instead, you'll be at 1 HP, and lose the ability to move. However, you can still fire the ultimate, and if you're able to kill someone with the ultimate, you'll be revived at a quarter HP and mana. So this opens up 2 main use cases for this ability. Saving it for a finishing move in both the laning phase and late game fights, or saving it as a way to cheat your own death and still remain relevant in a fight. Because remember, if you don't kill someone to get the revive, slamming through the enemy team with this ability and baiting them towards yourself just in case you do get the revive can be very effective. Naturally, you want to try and strike a balance between both use cases over the course of the match. And for the most part, as with most things on Chiron, it's very matchup dependent. When you know you're against a team who's just going to dive bomb you for free and can easily stop your third ability, you want to save the ability to save yourself, and still have some sort of impact, saving the ability for as long as you can. But it really is best just to keep your distance and throw the ability out from afar. Following up off of your teammates engage, tagging as many important targets as you can with this ability, and by extension your second ability, and then once the ultimate ends, finishing them off with your core kit. Speaking of which, some combos with Chiron. 1. Basic attack, 2, 3, basic attacks, ult. 1, 3, basic attacks, 2, ult. 3, basic attacks, 1, basic, 2, ult. Ult, 2, 3 basic attacks, and 1 to finish him off. For ability leveling, you're 1 at level 1, you're 2 at level 2, and you're 3 at level 3. From there you max your 1, your 2, then your 3, leveling the ultimate whenever you can. There's an argument to level the 2 over the 1 since, say, you can't miss it, plus it allows you to more easily use your 1 simply as a cleanse or a heal without giving up your most damaging ability. However, this is up to your discretion. Personally, I'd still just max my first ability. But that whole leveling order conversation helps isolate what makes Chiron so unique. There really aren't any other hunters like him with those sort of wacky utility abilities, especially when it comes to that cleanse. But in terms of everything else hunters want to do, Chiron's definitely lacking. He can't shred like a late game ADC like Ram or Izanami, nor can he burst quite as hard as someone like Martikaros or AMC. He's just in this weird middle ground where, yeah, he does a lot of damage, it's just not quite as much damage as these other characters can do in the late game. But again, he does bring a lot to the table that other characters simply don't. The range of the ultimate, the utility of the cleanse, and the insane setup with the 2 and 3. So he's definitely a hunter you want to pick up for fun and to cleanse not only the enemy's CC, but your palette of boring meta ADCs, not one you pick up because you want the highest chance of winning. With that in mind, you can expect to have fun on Chiron, but also expect to see his weaknesses rather quickly. That's all I have on Chiron for now. Thanks for watching.